event of the quarter. It has been such a fun ride with you this, whether this is your first Instrumentl event or your 20th. Thank you for being on this learning journey with us. We are closing the year out with a bang at today's event. We have a powerhouse lineup of experts with us today to give you the lowdown on essential grant writing strategies, best practices, everything you need under your belt to make 2025 a huge success for your organization, your clients, whatever mission you're serving. For any of our first timers, Instrumentl is the most loved all-in-one grants platform for prospecting, tracking, and management. And we currently help almost 4,000 nonprofits and grant consultants save time in finding and applying for more grants. And we host events like this one all the time to make sure we're equipping you with the insights needed to make the most of your grants program. Thank you, Allison, for the workbook link. I'll explain the workbook in just a moment. But first, I am not today's speaker, but I will introduce myself since I've been chatting for a while. I just realized you all cannot see my screen, can you? Wait one moment, please, while I troubleshoot here. Let's see if I can
I can see
multitask.
a screen that says welcome. Is that
Yep,
what you're
and that
sharing?
is the wrong screen.
Okay.
One moment. Now, there we go. Now you see the right screen. Sorry about that, little technical difficulties. For any of you who do not have a Google account for the workbook, I will send a PDF version in just a minute, so don't worry, we have you covered. Back to the intro. I'm Nia. If this is not your first event with Instrumentl, you've probably met me before. I am an events and community manager, and my job is to develop helpful and educational events like this one to share with our Instrumentl community. And I actually come from the nonprofit world. So prior to this, I worked in rainforest conservation and research. I was not directly on the grants team, but for any of you who are from small nonprofits, you know that in essence, everybody is on the grants team. So it's been super fun working with Instrumentl and talking all things grants with so many other nonprofit professionals. Some final housekeeping out of the way. This event is about 90 minutes long, and this is going to include the discussion with our experts, a live Q&A, and then a hands-on workshop inside Instrumentl. So if you've never tried Instrumentl, you'll have the chance to dive in today totally free of charge. If you're already using Instrumentl, I'm actually going to be walking you through some brand new capabilities on the platform. So I promise there's something really exciting for everyone. This event is being recorded, so if you miss anything, you want to reference back, you'll have the video in your inbox tomorrow, along with a ton of other resources from Instrumentl and from our amazing speakers. And I know we're all super busy, working hard. It's December 12th. We all have deadlines. So I want to thank you for being in the room with us today. I do want to make sure you feel free to take care of your personal needs. So if you need to grab water, grab a snack, totally fine. You do you. We will be right here. But I do want you to stick around till the end because we have a toolkit of grant writing resources we made just for you. If you're a regular, we know, we always have a couple people win coffee on us. So there's going to be some of that today. And there's also an Amazon gift card raffle that's happening. So there's a whole lot of reasons for you to stick around. And last but not least, full participation in this event is worth 1.5 CFRE points if you are after those. So let's talk about where we're headed. We're going to explore a little bit of everything in today's webinar. We really wanted to put together a comprehensive crash course on best practices in the world of finding funding, and we've distilled it down to these categories. So for starters, we'll chat about capacity building, strengthening your own or your team's skills and processes. We'll explore needs assessments. These are such a vital part of the grants process, and every seasoned development professional has their own way of approaching these. So we'll hear some tips around that. We'll hit on the age-old question of how can I make my grant proposal stand out from the crowd? And we will explore what everybody is most excited for, it seems, the 2025 grant seeking landscape. So what that might look like and strategies you need to know to be able to excel in it. And finally, we will wrap up with a hands-on workshop so we can send you away with an actual list of new funders and grant opportunities to explore. So for our panel discussion, we're actually going to ditch the slides. If you've been to our other expert panels, you know how this works. We have a workbook for you that you can use to follow along in a hands-on way. You can take notes of the strategies that the speakers share. I'm putting links in the chat. So this first one is going to make a copy on your Google Drive. It's owned by you. I can't access it or see it, and nobody else can access it. It's totally your document to keep. If you don't have a Google Drive account, here is a PDF version. It's a little more limited because you can't write in it as easily, but you can still follow along and take notes. And this is what the doc looks like. So just to give you a quick crash course on how to use it. As we move through these topics, I encourage you to take notes on the strategies that resonate with you. You can start thinking about how you'll implement these or, who on your team might own that task. Anything that's going to be helpful as you reference back to these tactics over the coming weeks or even next year. And again, those links are in the chat. And at the bottom of the workbook, there is space for a to-do list where you can actually write down the specific items you want to tackle first, to help you build these strategies into your nonprofit's culture, your operating procedures, what have you. So let me know in the chat if you have questions about the workbook. There's 2 versions right there. And with that, I want to jump into the good stuff. We have 3 incredibly knowledgeable experts in the room with us today to share their best practices. I want to give them first a huge shout out for taking the time to be here today. First of all, for being so generous with their expertise. I pretty much ask them to share like their secrets to success. And they're kind enough to spill the beans and then actually be here to walk you through what those tactics look like. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane, Amaya, and Allison to introduce themselves, share a little bit about the work they do, and in the spirit of the new year, I would love to also hear from each of you a professional highlight of yours from 2024, and then we will dive into our presentation. So Diane, let's start with you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Greetings from the Thousand Islands. So far, far, far upstate New York, where it is incredibly snowy today, full of lake effect, but thrilled to be with you. This is why virtual events are so amazing, aren't they? No travel involved. But I have loved grants my entire career. True. Started as a grant maker and then thought this is hard for both sides. And so switched to the grant seeking side and trying to help organizations take some of the stress out of grants where possible. So do a variety of training things like this, and also then doing some writing work with our writing team on behalf of our clients around the country. And I truly love all things grants, but also all things project management. I've been accused of being scrummy, which to me is the biggest compliment there could be. It means that grant writing and project management go together sort of like peanut butter and jelly, if that's a flavor profile you like. So those are the things that get me really excited. And professional highlight, um, probably I would say that it was actually doing so many collaborative workshops with other trainers this year. This was probably the highest number of collaborative presentations where I was with more than one other trainer. That was absolutely the coolest thing. Instead of being like the voice in a room, I like to be with lots of other voices. So I'd say that was it. Um, like today with these awesome co-panelists. So thanks for having me, Nia.
Oops, lost the unmute button. Thank you for being here, Diane. The pleasure is all ours. It is my favorite part of the job is getting to, meet all of these experts and be able to bring them into our programming. So truly thank you for being here. Amaya, let's hear from you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amaya Howard. I am the founder and principal consultant of Summit Grants Consultant. And I'm loving all the Texas folks in here. So I'm actually from Dallas, Texas, but I reside in Philadelphia. The weather has just been a little ugly, been rainy, but it's kind of bipolar. But at least it's not snowing. I'm just grateful for that at the moment. And Along one of the accomplishments, I love being in the room with other grant professionals too, because we all share the same struggles, the same things we go through. But I will say one of the biggest accomplishments I have achieved this year, I helped write a proposal that was granted to an artist in Westchester County, New York, and they now have the biggest mural on a 20-foot building because of the proposal I helped put it for. Actually, I'm gonna put it in the chat, but yeah, I helped write the proposal and it's a very beautiful mural. I can't take credit of his artwork, but I feel like I am a part of it. But I'm happy to be here and happy to share all my cheat codes with everyone.
Thank you, Amaya. And you definitely can take credit. I feel like that's the beauty of being in grants is that you've touched a little bit of everything that comes to life, right? So thank you for being here, Amaya. And Allison, let's go to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. My name is Allison Jones, and I'm the founder of Spark the Fire grant writing classes. I have a master's degree in education combined with 25 years of experience writing grants and teaching others to write grants. I also review grants for several foundations and government entities, and I have been an adjunct professor of grant writing at several universities. And I reside in both Texas, in Cuero, Texas, and Vashon Island, Washington. So shout out to both of those states. A professional highlight for me in 2024 is that I just started a new grant writing firm for my student interns to get experience and build their portfolio. So I have a certificate in grant writing class, and I noticed that students they'd get the certificate, but then maybe they still needed to get 3 years of experience to actually get the job. So my new grant writing firm, I'm really excited about it. It's for my student interns to get that experience and build their portfolio. And you can learn more about what I do at sparkthefiregrantwriting.com.
Thank you, Allison. And we actually have somebody in the room who is currently in your program. So shout out there. That's so fun. I love when we have folks from all different grant writing collectives and groups come join us at these events. We get so many interesting and insightful takes in the chat. So folks, as we move through the event, like I said, the chat box is all yours to ask questions, but I also really encourage you, if there's an experience you've had, if there's an insight you want to share, please go ahead and feel free. We love to read and catch up. Once we're done speaking, we go back and read everything. So we want to hear from you too. And with those intros out of the way, I actually want to go ahead and dive into the presentation. I know some folks had a problem with the PDF for the worksheet. I did put a new link in there. So if that's still not working, please let me know in the chat. I can try to troubleshoot some more, but I think that should have solved the problem. So everybody should be all good to go with the worksheet now. And with that, I want to go to our first topic, which is capacity building for grant writers. So all of us in this room are here because professional development, continuous learning, those are things that are important to us. But more importantly, they're critical to the missions we're serving, right? And so this idea of capacity building, I think this is really foundational to any sustained progress. We want to be continually equipping ourselves and our teams with more knowledge, better tools, more streamlined processes, and resilience to adapt to evolving changes in the world of finding funding, because it's a crazy world out there. So I want to start with this topic, and I'll turn it back to Allison to kick us off. But the first question I have for you all is, what is one practice to strengthen a grant writing team's or an individual grant writer's skills and overall capacity?
Yeah, great. So one of the best ways to strengthen your grant writing skills is to get regular constructive feedback on your writing. So I suggest looking for grant writing courses in which you actually write a grant proposal and receive feedback on your writing. And look for grant classes in which you can participate in peer reviews, which is a fantastic way to gain fresh perspectives and learn from one another. I also encourage my graduates to stay in touch with their cohort members and continue sharing their work even after the course ends. It's just such a valuable way to keep improving and help one another grow by being a part of a supportive community. And outside of training, I always recommend reaching out to grant makers after you receive notice, whether it's positive or negative, to request feedback. The foundations that I review grants for always provide feedback to their applicants when they ask for it. So as I actually review grants, I take the time to make good notes on what the grant writer did well and where they can improve. Feedback is it's such a powerful tool. It helps you sharpen your skills and gives you information to help your organization improve its processes, that sort of managing up, and it sets you up for success for your next proposal.
Totally. And something we hear a lot is, if you have a rejected proposal or something didn't quite work out for you, to ask for feedback. But often folks forget to ask for feedback if if something worked well. I think a feedback loop is usually less likely to be pursued there. And that's also just as important because you want to figure out, what from here really stood out to someone. So thank you, Allison. Amaya, let's go to you. Same question.
And I love that. As a seasoned professional in grants, you're never too good to get feedback. And a lot of times, if you get stuck writing the same program over and over again, it's just sometimes you kind of lose that. So it's good to get feedback. Thank you for that. And the one thing I want to add is to Diane's point, I became a project manager too. Me and Asana, we're like, that's my best friend. So as a grant writer, I had to become a grant professional, and I feel like there is a difference with being a grant writer and being a grant professional, being able to work with the different moving parts within putting together a proposal, and also like making sure that you have your own internal deadlines that's different from the external deadlines. If you are at a big organization and you need input from a lot of different team members, I've always say I don't never give them the real deadline. I will lie and say it's due on the 15th when it's actually due on the 20th, so I can get the things I need together. But I had to be a project manager, people manager, especially working with even external partners to making sure that I have enough time to work on it by myself whenever I'm working with a larger things. And then also grant writers, even development teams, we tend to work in silos. A lot of times we try to do everything on our own and can't really be successful with working by yourself. So try to pull in as many resources. And like I said, become a grant professional. It required me to be also tech savvy, using different other database. And I'm not getting paid to say this, but Instrumentl was helpful. It's very helpful. But then also using other databases. I'm very I love using Salesforce and things like that. So being able to up my skills and being tech savvy, using different things that improve the efficiency of the organization, it definitely will help with this.
Thank you, Amaya. And I can confirm we did not pay Amaya to give a shout out to Instrumentl, but we love the love. And totally, yeah, tech. I think, especially in the nonprofit world, I find a lot of folks are a little bit less comfortable with expanding to tech. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the cost barrier. If you're in nonprofits, a lot of tech is going to be out of budget for you, but there's so much returning value that you can get from investing wisely in the tech that you actually need. So I love that you called that out. All right, Diane, same question.
I'm going to follow on the tech trend for a moment. And it goes with what Maya was saying about project management. So I joked that I've been called scrummy, and to me, that's a compliment. I'm gonna be like, what does that even mean? So it was 10 years ago, almost to the day. It was a different cold and snowy day in far, far upstate New York when I first learned about agile ways of working and Scrum. And that took my team on a completely different journey for how we operated. And in the time since, a lot of the organizations we work with are like, how are we submitting earlier in advance of the deadline? Scrum. And they're like, what? I'm like, don't worry, you don't need to know the language, just that it's magic for reducing our stress. But the tech piece, right? There's lots of awesome tools, but the thing I want to highlight when you get into project management tools is that they're used to like working with a lot of for-profits, and some of them have specific nonprofit teams that either make it so you can get a free license or a highly discounted project management license. So like Mural, if anybody loves a good whiteboard, especially the digital kind, Mural, like Amaya's mural that was art-based, right? That kind of mural free for nonprofits. And you can play and brainstorm your grant calendar. I have so much fun facilitating in that with like GPA chapters talking about multi-dimensional grant calendars and how to take into account more than just your deadline. So that one's a great one that can be free. And then since you called out Asana for specific project management, did you know that they have an entire nonprofit team and that they'll give 50% off to nonprofits? I didn't know that until recently. And I don't advocate for any one tool. They're all awesome for different reasons, right? You've got like a list of like a dozen that are just project management. Probably more than that, probably like 2 dozen. But what is in your grant toolbox? Like that's what you need to think about. What is in terms of capacity building? Different tools for different reasons. Whiteboard for a reason over here for facilitation, project management tool for another reason over here. awesome Instrumentl that drops reminders or lets you know when a deadline changes. That's my favorite email. Did you know the deadline changed? I'm like, no, thank you for watching for me, right? Let your toolbox work for you, but also don't feel pressured that you need to know all the things in the toolbox. This one I learned early on in my time as a member at the Grant Professionals Association. I got into a van from the airport with Amanda Day, now past president for the Grant Professionals Association. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, these are my peeps. So whether you're part of GPA or not, what I learned back in 2012 was how important talking to other grant professionals were. So to me, capacity building is yes about your tool and how, but also who is in your network that you can ask questions of when you encounter something brand new for the first time. And knowing, like even what you saw today, how we shared each other's links. I'm like, oh, well, I know what they do. Oh, and you're talking about NSF? Have you talked to so and so? Like that open sharing and connecting of the network. I wouldn't discount that for how important it is in your capacity building for the year ahead.
100%. I love that you called that out. I would actually love to take a minute and folks, if you are a member of any sort of nonprofit association, some sort of grant writing collective, any sort of group like that, let us know in the chat and let's share some resources. Let's share some new networks that folks can get connected with because we have such a vibrant community of event goers that are always coming to our events. And it would be great to just get connected outside of this space as well in more permanent places, right? So feel free to use the chat box as a way to share what you're a member of and look at what others are members of and see if there's anything that, resonates with you, something that you might consider for 2025. I love that you brought that up, Diane. That's really so important. And with that, I want to pivot a little bit and talk about conducting effective needs assessments. Let's actually get into the grant application lifecycle. And I want to start at the very, very, very beginning with needs assessments. A well-executed needs assessment is the foundation of a compelling grant proposal because it not only identifies the core issues to address, but it also builds credibility. It demonstrates alignment with funders' priorities. So being strategic with this step can really make or break the story your proposal tells, right? So, Amaya, I want to start with you right here, and I would love to hear from you. First of all, if you could just give us a very quick overview of what a needs assessment is, and in case there's anybody who's not familiar with that. And then to talk a little bit about an approach that works, something that grant writers can focus on during a needs assessment to ensure that they're setting the stage for a compelling and successful grant proposal. And I know that was a mouthful. I can repeat that.
No, that's totally fine. So, and a needs assessment is basically, I mean, obviously, is what your needs is, or what are the gaps between your organizations? What are the outcomes are you trying to achieve, and how you're going to get there? And the way the needs assessment, and a lot of times people work backwards of they're writing a grant and they realize that, oh, we're doing this, we actually need to do that. And then when a funder asks about outcomes and goals, that's when they start thinking about that, but that really needs to happen at the very beginning stage. And one thing that I started doing with my clients now, and I actually hated doing it when I was in college, was creating a logic model. And logic model, I remember the project I did in college, hated it, but then I realized like, oh, this is actually what I need to do with everyone. I did one, it was a requirement for a grant, and I was like, everyone needs to have a logic model. So what are your inputs? What are your outputs? How many people is going to take? How much time each person is going to need to invest into your outcomes, your goals? What is the need? What is the gap that your organization is actually fulfilling? And you need to know, how much manpower, what's the cost is going to be. And a lot of times organizations do need to pause and take like some time to actually fill out a logic model. And there's templates. You can just Google logic model and get templates. I'm happy to put one in the chat too. But that simple exercise, it actually, you're starting to build out the language for your grant by doing that. When they start asking for a budget narrative, when they ask for your outcomes, when they ask for how are you going to measure it. By doing that logic model, you can answer essentially most of a grant application by doing that.
Thank you, Amaya. And I would love to pivot and ask that same exact question to Diane.
Let's just continue the love for logic models, shall we? Now, usually we say that, and I think, Allison, you probably are feeling the same way. Like you might duck, like we're in a Zoom room, logic model, right? Not everyone loves one. Um, can I ask a question in the chat box? Scale of 1 to 10. 1, not comfortable learning what they are for the first time today. 10, I love a logic model. Please don't pass me the mic, but I love a logic model. Could you let me know your comfort level? I'm very curious. And there is no judgment in your answer, but it's a room full of folks who care about grants. So I thought I'd ask. Um, well, but logic models often scare folks. And, I do think, Amaya, that you're right. It's a great spot to talk about what is the bigger need, even if it's not a formal needs assessment process, as the way some funders might decide. It can be a great sandbox for discussing and brainstorming. What are the things we have as resources? What's the impact we want to create? And kind of how could we get between here and there? And one of the things that we do for like when we're training with folks or even facilitating with our clients that I thought made it a little more accessible, we teach them how to do a logic model using chocolate chip cookies. Now, I had previously been part of the peanut butter and jelly exercise related to logic models that others, these are not new ideas. I can't take credit for them. But I mean, how fun, right? We know what chocolate chip cookies are, whether you love chocolate or not, whether you eat sugar or not. Um, And so in terms of thinking about needs assessment sounds scary, but does help in terms of understanding what's going on in the community, what is it that you have, what are your goals, who are your partners? Like getting that information indeed does make the proposal so much stronger. So we found that, and I'd love to hear what others have tried as well, that by taking 10 to 15 minutes when there's folks in the room who are not sure what this process is or what is the information you're asking for, making it so that there's some shared understanding in a way, though, that it has some fun and a little bit of shared knowledge and experience beforehand, really has made the conversation more fruitful because then folks aren't scared about, well, I'm sitting here in this formal planning assessment discussion or this formal planning, like for logic model discussion. And they can kind of carry some of the fun they just had together. And we found that to produce some really nice results. In order to then feed ultimately an amazing application. So yeah, if anybody's tried the chocolate chip cookie version or the peanut butter and jelly, or if there's another food version that I should consider, it is lunchtime in the Eastern time zone. So I'm all in. Tell me about whatever else you have tried.
Yeah, let us know in the chat, folks. We had a lot of people say 8, 9, 10 on their comfort with logic models. So we would love to hear what what food related strategy are you using with your logic models? And Allison, same exact question.
Yeah, thanks. Well, first, I want to mention that in my book that's coming out next year, I'm renaming the community need assessment or the community need statement. I'm renaming it the community insight statement because it's more empowering. I like to think of our communities as not needing things, but just this section of the proposal where we gain more insight into, the reader gains more insight into exactly what is happening in the community, what are their strengths and challenges. So I hope everyone will join me in changing that language. But the key to a powerful community insight statement is visibility and relatability. So I have a master's degree in adult education, and I think a lot about brain research. And brain research tells us that people connect with stories and imagery much more than abstract numbers. So use analogies or comparisons that help the reader visualize the issue in a way that feels really tangible. So just an example, if your organization removes a ton of trash from a river annually, don't just state the number, compare it to something that they can picture, like the weight of a car versus the weight of a school bus, or the amount of trash a family produces in a year. It makes the statistic much more vivid and memorable. And equally important is making the data relatable. So tie your statistics to someone the reader can imagine or empathize with. Brain research also shows that people are more likely to care about one individual story than a large abstract group. There's this famous quote by Mother Teresa, and it says, If I look at a mass, I will never act. If I look at the one, I will. And so, for example, instead of saying 8% of kids drop out of school, you might share a story about a student facing those challenges and then relate their experience to the larger statistic. When readers can connect the data to someone they might know, a neighbor, a friend's child, or even themselves, it's going to build empathy and it's going to make your case much stronger. So visualization and relatability are what turn those numbers into a compelling story that inspires action.
Totally. And I think you're transitioning us perfectly into our next topic, which is actually crafting those proposals, right? I do want to shout out that Diane dropped a link in the chat for the logic model guidebook that their team has. So if you want to scroll up a little bit, you can find that if you're looking for more info on logic models. But back to the conversation that Allison just started, which is actually crafting that story that stands out, right? That compelling proposal. So once we've done that needs assessment, it's up to us to prove that the project that we have deserves the funding that a grant maker has available. And more often than not, it's going to come down to crafting a proposal that stands out from the hundreds, if not thousands, of other proposals in that funder's inbox, right? So this is maybe the question we get most in all our workshops. And there is so much advice out there about how to make your proposal stand out. So tell a beautiful story, but make it under 5 sentences and include a video, but don't add anything they didn't ask for and include testimonials and this and that, right? So what do you actually do? So I gave our speakers a really tricky task here, and I've asked them to share one best practice to ensuring your grant proposal stands out in a competitive and funding environment. And Allison, I'm just going to turn it right back to you because you sort of started us on that thread.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I just had to unmute. I wasn't expecting that. um, yeah, so the best practice to ensure that your grant proposal stands out is to remember that grant makers fund causes, not organizations. And that's so important to remember when you're writing a grant. It's understanding that not understanding that is the biggest pitfall in grant writing. And so you want to make sure your grant proposal stands out. You want to frame it around how you're going to serve the community and not how the grant will support your organization. So the focus of the grant should always be on the outcomes for people or the community that you aim to serve, not your internal needs. So here's what I mean. If your request is for a new staff member, that person should only be mentioned in the funder's request section and the project budget, not throughout the narrative. The community insight section should describe the challenges that your target population faces and the outcomes that you aim to achieve. The project description should focus on the services being delivered and the impact to the community. And the evaluation section should highlight how you're going to measure success in terms of community outcomes, not internal metrics like staff performance. So for example, instead of saying we need a new staff person, your narrative should say, this program will increase access to culturally competent, linguistically accessible mental health services so that individuals can improve their wellness and agency. The new staff person is simply a means to that end, not the focus of the proposal. So the framing, this reframing, it centers the proposal on the community, positions the participants as heroes of their own stories, and aligns your request with the funder's desire to invest in meaningful change. So using tools like the logic model can keep the reader keep this focus clear and consistent across that potential. And I know that AMEA does a lot of work in this area, empowering language and positioning participants as the heroes of their own story. And so I don't know if she was planning to say more about that, but I just wanted to shout out about that because I love the work that AMEA is doing in that area.
Yeah, let's turn it over to Amaya to just keep that thread going. And I hope everybody had their keyboards or their pens and papers out when Allison read out that compelling proposal, because that was just hand
Yeah.
delivered what a good proposal should sound like, right? Remember, you will get the recording, so no pressure here. But Amaya, let's hear from you.
Yes. So I'm just a little backstory. So like I said, I was from Dallas and I moved to Philly. And I was introduced to Philly as it being the poorest major city in America. And even though like on paper that's statistically true, but when I walked the streets, when I actually was in the community, it wasn't accurately like I didn't like referring to the city as the poorest major city in America. And so I was introduced to a term called asset framing, and someone in the chat actually mentioned they do asset assessment instead of a needs assessment. And what asset framing do, it is you basically are describing your community or the people that you work with by highlighting their strengths, their potential, their aspirations. And so one thing I am working on when I work with people, they're like, oh, we serve the underserved community, we serve this in need person. But whenever you approach someone in the streets, or even a client that comes in, they don't come in and say, I'm underserved, I am at-risk youth. They don't say that about themselves. So we should talk to the people that's actually in the community that who we serve, and we should get from them like how do they want to be addressed. And we're talking about them and their grant proposals. So let's actually talk how they would speak to themselves. So one thing, and I would love for other people to do is like if you in your mission say something that you're underserved, you serve at risk or inner city, let's find other words or way to describe your in your how do you describe your demographic, how you describe your community. One I've like made a list because it's also hard, but like I love using resilient. And that also like came around like I work with a very resilient community. And you can still understand like a resilient community is the same as a what you would call an underserved community, or even opportunity seeking, equity seeking community, or this community is building strength, or they're up and coming. Use words that are in a positive light, because I feel like nowadays we have um, a habit of selling trauma to funders to get money. And that just really didn't sit right with me. And I don't like being able to, like I said, just a big thing of trauma porn. I do not want to be able to just tell a very traumatizing story just to get funded money. And so I'm actually going to post one of the articles that I've written with the Grant Professional Association, and it talks about a lot of things that I written about. But let's focus on the assets. Let's focus on the community, like what are they doing positively, and then how your organization is going to build off the positives of your community, of your network, of your organization, and go off that. And funders are actually switching to that because, like I said, everyone is serving underserved. Everyone is serving, disadvantaged youth. But what are you doing for those that are, improving, those most improved individuals in your community? So I'm going to drop that. And thank you for the perfect segue, Alice.
Yeah, that was the perfect segue. Yeah, folks, check out the link that Amaya is going to drop in the chat if you want to get more intel on that. We had somebody in the chat, Beth said, so that all neighbors can thrive is the language they use. So I love that. Right on the money with what Amaya is saying. Folks, if you have some asset framing that you've done with your own organization or reframing, let us know in the chat. Let us know what some of those words you use are, because I think this is super helpful when you can get like those actual concrete sentences and words to illustrate what it means to asset frame, right? Diane, let's go to you with your compelling grant proposal tip.
Wanted to add one little nugget that there was a wonderful presentation done on nonviolent language at the Grant Professionals Association 2 years ago, and then it's come out in a few different spots since then. But what it prompted was like an ongoing conversation about language choice and what is it that funders are using, and do we mirror back or not? Funders use things like target population. I'm like, well, one, that's violent language. Two, that is not asset focused language. We're targeting the, and so it just, and I don't have the answer, but like funders are using language that is not always asset driven in the way you've just discussed. And I think it brings up a question for us. Well, if we want funders to see our responses, are we trying to mirror their language back at them? Or should we put stronger community focused language in front of them? Like I said, I don't have the answer. I think it's a fascinating dialogue though for how to like be competitive. Because what were we all taught in English in school? State the question back to the exam. State the question back to the grant maker. And I'm like, well, what if I don't want to use your language back to you, dear grant maker? Because I would prefer something else. So food for thought. Talk about it in the chat. I'll be back in a moment to type at you there. But one proven tactic or best practice. So I don't know if you remember, I said in my introduction, I started as a grant maker. I am sorry for part of being the initial pilots related to online applications. I am sorry for what happened, right? Who would have thought? Why do I make that terrible joke? So when we think about what our applications look like, we're usually thinking about the character count, and it is so hard as a reviewer to often read through what is there. Sometimes it's the portal that won't let us have any formatting, but sometimes now there's a little more of an opportunity to force some formatting. So while we've had some very meaningful content-focused pieces that came from Allison and Amaya as suggestions, mine's going to be a little more logistical, tactical. How can you make it easier for your reviewers to read your work? Each reviewer digests information in a really different way. Some might be neurodivergent, some might prefer graphics over text, some might need just a little bit of white space to digest. You don't want to make them go on a treasure hunt to find your goal statement, to understand what are your SMART objectives. You don't want them to read it and say, I couldn't find the goal. If by chance you happen to be in an application where you could influence what the formatting and the white space looked like. So we spend so much time, I think, day to day worrying about the word choice and the character count and getting all that information in. But we need our grant reviewers to be able to read it and digest it and understand it. And I think that sometimes we get too caught up in what's the portal and what's the count. I know I do. I was like, why did you only give me 2,500 characters? I need 10,000, please, right? Or whatever it is. So please don't forget that there's someone, a person, not yet AI, although we'll see what happens later, but there are people reading your work. How easy are you making it for them to read and digest about your awesome work? I'm a huge fan of white space. Huge fan. Basic structure.
Thank you, Diane. I love the balance that we're having in in our panelist answers today. We're getting all sides of the story. The content, the logistics is perfect. I know your worksheets, if you're following along on your worksheet, I know those are filling up. I want to now, in the interest of time, there's a lot more we could explore here, and I have some questions that I've written down that I'll bring back in our Q&A time. But in the interest of time, I want to move on to one of the final topics we'll be talking about today, which is grant trends. And I know a lot of folks were really excited to start to explore this one. So I want to zoom out a little bit, look at the funding landscape as a whole, because no matter what individual strategies we're using, white space, no white space, asset framing, not asset framing, we're still operating inside a system of constantly evolving trends, priorities, where's the money going, what do they care about right now? And in many ways, this dictates what's going to work and what isn't, right? We don't always have all the power there. So I'll start with Amaya, and the question I want to ask is, looking ahead to 2025, what is one significant grant making trend you anticipate? And then what's a specific strategy you would recommend for grant writers to successfully leverage that trend?
One trend I have really recognized and I appreciate is that funders are going more into a trust-based philanthropy, this really equity center. So when I first started out, it was really hard to get unrestricted dollars from any organization, but now I see a lot of funders going into more of a multi-year unrestricted pattern. And recently I had a client that got funded from the Ford Foundation, and they sent the email saying, if you have a general operating grant, we're not requiring any reporting, because a lot of times funders just need to put the money in the people's hand and let them be the experts that they are about the community that they're served, and not being dictated by specific metrics that are really guiding what organizations are doing their program. And I see so many times where organizations, they are having trouble tracking specific metrics, even though I feel like you should, but really funder specific metrics that take so much time, energy, and really a type of expertise. And funders are shifting from that, which I would love to see more people go into that trust-based philanthropy model, and just have less regulations on the funds that they serve. Because in the spirit of being like equitable, a lot of organizations, they don't have these tools that we mentioned to really organize. They just need the capacity, and they also have very untraditional structures within the organization. So they may not always monitor or track how many individuals that are being impacted, or they don't have the capacity to do a post and pre and post survey to take to measure the impact. And but they sometimes it's just hard for them to do that. And so they're being very more lenient now by taking away those restrictions on funds, and then also those restriction on reporting, because many can argue that reporting takes as much time as writing the grant, and writing the grant takes a lot of hours. So I want to see more funders do that, and I know it takes building more trust. That's what the trust-based philanthropy with organizations to do that. But hopefully, one more organization, they build that relationship with the funders, and we see a lot of more. Hopefully, we see a lot more of that happen.
Thank you. Yeah, so true. And I love that you brought up reporting. We talk about reporting a lot in our workshops because it's such a critical process of the grants journey. Like everybody thinks of the grant application, like once you get the award, that's it, your journey's done, but totally not. The reporting is just as big a deal, right? So love that you brought that up. For folks who are going to stick around for the Instrumentl workshop, I'm actually going to show you a little bit about how Instrumentl can take the reporting off your shoulders now and automate it for you, which is fun. Little shout out there. But I love that tip, Amaya. Diane, let's hear from you.
So when we talk about trends, that's been a big conversation in our office with our different organizations we work with. And, frankly, it is in every election cycle. But so I'm just going to acknowledge it doesn't matter what political side you're on. Anytime there is an election cycle, there will be changes. And so, hold on, it's a good thing I had my prop right at hand. What'll help us in 2025? A little bit of humor. Yes, that's actually my tech. Wait, is that going to work? Decidedly so. Perfect. Okay, a little bit of humor and lightheartedness. But when we think about our trends and what's going to help us, the best practices that these awesome colleagues have been talking about out loud and that you have been sharing in the chat box, those are the best practices that are still going to work in 2025. There will be changes. There are always changes. It's part of why I love Agile so much. Agile value number 4, it is our badge as grant writers and grant professionals. The value is responding to change over following a plan. How many of you feel like you are doing an amazing job responding to change over following a plan? Just about every day. You might not give yourself a 10 on that scale in the chat box, but you know what? I do. Each and every one of you. So I would say don't forget that value. That's an important one. But your best practices, whether it's logic models or your language choices, and it's Elizabeth Grimm, who was the speaker I was talking about. I found it. I'm going to put a link in the chat box in a moment. But your best practices are what they are and will continue to resonate with the people who are reading your work. So don't let the uncertainty that's around us in any moment, don't let that dissuade you from doing what you know is best. It'll all, in some way, come out in service and in favor of your community, right? You're doing awesome work. Don't forget that.
Thank you, Diane. That's a super important reminder. We're big advocates of, investing meaningfully in strategies that are going to pay off. And there's no quick fixes. There's no quick ways to address grants, anything that has to do with funding. There's no Band-Aid sticker solution that's going to get you there. So that's a really important reminder. And yeah, everybody in the chat saying thank you. Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Diane. And Allison, let's go to you with your grant trend that you anticipate in 2025.
Yeah, so looking ahead, one significant trend that I see, and I think sometimes it's the elephant in the room, but it's the growing recognition of AI as a tool that can create more equity in grant making. So I've actually spoken with countless grant makers who believe that AI is going to help level the playing field for smaller, underrepresented organizations that often lack the capacity to write multiple grant applications or hire a professional grant writer. And so by enhancing efficiency in the grant writing process, AI is actually going to enable these smaller organizations to compete more effectively for funding. So AI can assist with tasks like drafting proposals, researching funding opportunities, analyzing data, allowing small nonprofits, nonprofits of all sizes, to stretch their limited resources further by reducing the time and effort needed to prepare strong applications. I don't know if you've heard rumors that grant makers are rejecting AI written proposals, but let me assure you that that is not true. Grant makers care about the quality and the clarity of the proposal, not the tools used to create it. So in fact, I did a test. I took a grant that I wrote in 2003, so quite a long time ago. And I uploaded it into several AI detectors that claimed that they were the best AI detectors out there. And the result was that these AI detectors said that the grant that I had written so many years ago was 80% AI generated, which of course it wasn't. So these tools are they're not reliable, at least not at this point, and grant makers know that. So again, if you hear that grant makers are rejecting AI written proposals, it's just not true. So the key for grant writers to learn to use AI effectively and ethically to enhance, not replace, but enhance their expertise. When used thoughtfully, AI can really help organizations that previously struggled to compete, fostering a more equitable funding landscape. So for more of this, check out the new report from Instrumentl. Shout out to Instrumentl. Ryan created a report on AI use in grant writing. And it's interesting to read what you can find out what grant writers said how and when they were using it and what they were using it for. It's really interesting. And then I'm also hosting a webinar series February 10th to 13th, where we're going to dive into practical strategies for integrating AI into your grant writing process. So I'll drop the link for that in the chat, but I wanted just to let you know about that. Yeah, it's AI and grant writing.
Thank you, Allison. I'll let Ryan know you gave him a shout out. He's gonna love that. He's usually at our events, but he's not at this one the day he gets a shout out. Thank you. So those were the trends, and I want to turn now to our Q&A. We're running a little bit behind, so I'll try to keep the Q&A snappy and quick so we have time for everything. But Allison, I want to let you catch your breath, so I'm going to come back to you in a second with a question about AI that we just had in the chat because that feels appropriate. But give you a breather. I'll go to Diane with this question. This was way early on in the webinar, but Kelly said that they love logic models, great tool for project planning, but they're not successful in getting the program team to play along. So do you have any advice, best practices for how to get logic models or any sort of like new system that you want to get in place, how to get your team bought into that?
Yeah. So I'm not about labels. Never have been. Didn't matter when I was a teenager and it was about the labels on the clothes. Doesn't matter about now. Do you call yourself agile or not? Labels in terms of what you're using as a framework to get information from your awesome colleagues doing the awesome work, also not important to me. Here's why I say that. Sometimes folks have in your organization some sort of connotation. Oh, logic models. I'm going to have to sit down. What to do? There's something about it that might feel stressful or clunky for them. Once worked with an organization, they called them the program information form. It was not in table format. It was a document. They loved it. But when we talked about logic models, nope, crickets, not into it. So it's part of why we started doing the chocolate chip cookie exercise to kind of make it feel a little more friendly, get people engaged, realize it. We're only asking for an hour. Let's see how far we can get, including the chocolate chip cookie, right? Putting some clear boundaries on is one thing we found to be helpful, but also to try other formats, structures, names for things as a way to potentially get folks more involved. It's not that they don't want to help, right? They want the grant money, you're going to help them unlock, but there's something about it that's a barrier in the moment. So, and maybe it's just that they truly have so much going on their plate, which is always true, that the idea of having to sit down and do that work when they're really trying to get to the community members they're working with just might be the barrier itself. So, I would just try to be creative about other ways around it.
Thank you, Diane. Hopefully, there's some tips in there for you all. Trust me, I feel the pain of knowing a system is going to be game changing and just not having your team buy into that. It is an uphill battle. When you win it, you'll know it'll be great, but it definitely takes a while. Amaya, I want to go to you with this question, but everybody else can feel free to hop on in. We had a question from Beth asking about what development or donor CRMs you recommend that are also a good fit for grant management. And I just want to expand that question a little bit because you all touched on tech. Is there any specific tech that you would recommend for organizations to really look into? I know we've had some in the chat box, so this can be, feel free to just list off stuff that works for you, and we can hear from all of you. Amaya, you're muted.
I'm muted. Yes. So one that works for both, but it just isn't the best user friendly and is quite expensive is Salesforce. So I am a Salesforce fanatic. I love doing reports in there, but it does require the entire team to be a part of it to work and all the information in there. But Salesforce does have a way where you can manage your grants, manage your opportunities, create reports that has all your deadlines and your for both proposals and your reports in there. And you can also manage individual donors if they're a part of a corporate organization or if they're an individual household. But and I would love anybody else input for someone that has a smaller organization if there's something that does both. But my experience is a lot with Salesforce, which I love, and I love setting it up and doing the back end. I call it doing the dishes when I'm away from I'm tired of writing grants, so I just like to do some of the data administrative part of like updating Salesforce and things like that. Someone in the chat, oh, there was Allison, you said Boomerang is a good one.
Yeah, Allison or Diane, if you want to add anything onto that to the tech question, feel free.
Yeah, Bloomerang is a CRM that's specifically designed for smaller nonprofits, small to mid-size. So it's not a great choice for a really large organization, but for those smaller ones, it's great. For me, my team uses Instrumentl. Again, it's I'm not paid to say that, but actually, my team uses Instrumentl all the time for tracking our grant calendar, tracking deadlines. It got really great functionality in terms of you can add tasks to each funding opportunity and then check them off, and then the next one pops up. And so our team has, a 50-day turnaround on grants. So that means from the time that we decide it's a good fit, and it goes through 50 days of writing and review before it's actually submitted. And we strive to submit it at least 2 weeks early from the deadline. Instrumentl facilitates that whole process. So I can assign, one team member to write the draft and the next person to send it to the client for review and so on. So that's my go-to, but of course, that's not going to help with individual donors and so on. So if you're trying to do all of those things, then Bloomerang is a good one. Little Green Light is another one that's good. I've used Razor's Edge in the past. It's super robust for larger organizations. Diane?
So my tool agnostic reply is because we work with such a wide variety of organizations that already have something that I don't get to usually walk into a spot where it's like, oh, we could choose anything. So my normal answer when asked about tech is, what do you already use as the organization and everybody will use it? and then what either has some sort of API plugin, or what can do an Excel out and in, or I guess CSV. But like, so I'm usually asking what's your base that everyone's willing to use versus like, we've got a clean slate and we can build what we want. Because these are all great tools that you've talked about, and there are more than even we've discussed, right? But I want like as few clicks as possible, ease of getting information. Um, so those are the types of questions I'm usually asking, but I try not to have an opinion about one, since it just depends on the organization and what they have and what's already there.
Yeah, and I love Amaya's point in the chat, which is like, bottom line is you need to get everybody on board to use it. So a tool that everybody's using is going to be better than the best tool in the world if nobody on your team wants to use it, right? So I think that's the important thing to keep in mind here. But fantastic recommendations there for a whole bunch of platforms. Like I said, you'll get the recording if you missed any of them, so you can go in and explore those in your free time later. I'm going to wrap us up with two final questions because I want to make sure our speakers are out by the time I promised them they could be out. And I want to give you the Instrumentl workshop I promised as well. So Allison, back to the AI question, and feel free we could explore this topic for hours. So feel free to just make it a really quick answer. But Cole wanted to know how you reconcile the use of AI for grant writing with data harvesting or any sort of security concerns. And I know this got addressed in the chat, but I just wanted to bring it up in case somebody's not following along with the chat, because it's a really important question that a lot of folks are asking.
Yeah, it is important. So AI was best described to me as it is now, and how it's going to transform into the future as an oracle, um, almost like a set of encyclopedias. There's going to be tons of data in there that people can access, and it's all user generated. So the more we put information in, the more information is in there. If there's something private that you don't want to share, don't put it in there, right? But on the other hand, there's even like in Chat GPT, there are grant writing. I can't even think of the word for it right now, but somebody has created like a grant writing channel within Chat GPT that you can access, excuse me, to get more information. So yeah, just think of it as an oracle. It's got a lot of information.
True. Perfect. Straight to the point. Thank you, Allison. And the final question, Elizabeth wanted to know a little bit about the advantages of being part of a professional community like GPA, or about CFRE certification. So as a newcomer to professional grants and to nonprofit development, they were just interested in hearing about some of the opportunities that helped you grow and continue to help you grow. And Diane, I'll pose this question to you because you were the first one to really talk about the network as being super important. And then I'll let Allison and Amaya also chime in and give their take.
Yeah, so it took years of me being a solo grant individual as an employee. And then when I started my firm 20 years ago, I was by myself. And I was like, not that I'm the only one doing this, right? But I didn't know people. I live in a small rural community, and no one else around me does what I do. And so the idea that there are other people doing the same things and learning from, and so teaching and learning, right, within those networks has been one of the most powerful changes in my career. Uh, Taught me I wasn't alone, taught me a lot of other things that made me stronger as a professional. So I love to talk about the Grant Professionals Association because their membership isn't very expensive. I know it's not free, so that's still something. But you get all their webinars as part of the membership. So I think that's really great. I think that local groups, there was a brown bag lunch group out of Western New York, so near the Buffalo area, that met for like over a decade, not affiliated with anyone. And there's groups like that all around the country that are like the informal groups, not a chapter of AFP or a chapter of GPA. I think anywhere where you can find other colleagues to talk um, is great to have as a sounding board. And, you know, there's LinkedIn groups, there's forums, then that some of the membership groups offer. I think it's a wonderful way to stay connected and not feel like you have to know all the things, because that's a lot of heavy weight for all of us. So it's not so much for me about maybe what the professional credentials are that the groups offer. even though I have one, right? That's not what defines our success, but rather just finding your peeps in whatever way you want to define it, so that you've got a little bit of community to support you. And I saw there were some great folks calling out things that they're a part of.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Diane. Yeah, go for it, Amaya.
yeah, I would just, of course, the Grant Professional Association. I've been a member of both the Grant Professional Association and the AFP, Association of Fundraising Professionals, but I prefer the Grant GPA over AFP mainly because I found more people like me, and I didn't do a lot of work working with individual donors. But even though there are a lot of grant professionals in AFP, and one thing that also is big in my region, I live in Philadelphia, is the Free Library of Philadelphia actually has a foundation, and then they have grant writing courses. And the grant writing courses, like early on in my career, I will go to the different levels of grant writing courses at my library. Um, and that connected me with a lot of different other grant professionals that was teaching the course. And also, one thing I do on LinkedIn, if I come across someone page that's also a grant writer fundraiser, I'm going to connect with you. So that is how I realized that community in the grant writing space is, we all love each other. It's like no competition. We actually like feed off of each other. It's really a bond in the grant writing fundraising community. So I may have never seen you in my life, but if you're a development professional, I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Thank you, man. We actually have a question for you in the chat box. I just tagged you in there. Allison, do you want to give any intel on professional associations?
Yeah. I belong to the Grant Professionals Association. And as far as credentials, I've been writing grants for 25 years. And so when I started writing grants, those certifications like the GPC and the CFRE didn't exist back then. And for a long time, I thought, well, why should I get that? I've got all of this experience. I don't really need to get that credential. But actually, I am getting my GPC this year, and I'm really excited about it. And the reason I've chosen to get it after all of these years is because I think that what these organizations are doing, like GPA, CFRE, to just raise the professionalism of the industry, is amazing. And so I just want to support that by going ahead and getting my GPC. I might end up getting my CFRE as well. These organizations are doing such good work. They're building community. It feels like family. Anytime you go to the National Grant Conference, or belong to a chapter, it feels like you have family and you have that support. Grant writers get burned out all the time. And so just knowing that there's someone you can talk to that probably has had a similar experience. And GPA has a listserv where you can ask questions. You can ask them anonymously, and get answers immediately. It's just really helpful. So.
Thank you, Allison, so much. And with that, I think our Q&A time has come to an end. We're a little bit over, so thank you to our speakers for staying beyond when I promised them I would let them go. But I want to give a huge shout out to Allison, to Amaya, to Diane for being here today. Like I said in the intro, it's so meaningful and valuable and important to us to not just get your strategies and your insights, but to actually have you in the room with us to, share it in person, and then all of these valuable links that you're putting in the chat. This has been a really incredible webinar, so we really appreciate it. I'm gonna let each of you shout out any next steps or anything that any way folks can connect with you. I'll also put your LinkedIn in the chat, and then folks, everybody stick around because we're gonna turn to our hands-on workshop in just a minute. So don't drop off, but I will turn it over back to Amaya to give us a farewell.
Yes, it's been a pleasure, and I've been enjoying interacting with the chat. So I'm going to drop my website and contact form in the chat. And yeah, I will respond back with, like I said, I'm a yapper. I can just chat about anything, and just, if you ever need a room to rant, I can be a fake therapist. You're a grant writing therapist. That's actually not bad. Grant writing therapist. But I would love to chat with anyone that has a question. So yeah.
Thank you, Amaya. I put Amaya's LinkedIn in the chat box, and then I'm sure there'll be more links. So just keep an eye on the chat, y'all. Don't miss anything. Diane, let's go with you.
Yeah, so had so much fun talking with everybody in the chat box, and I opened piles of links out of the chat myself. And so I'm like, I have some to-do items over lunch. And the resources that we're sharing, links to come forward, are our grant readiness guide and also our grant maker relationship guide. And so we'll be sharing that as a year-end gift to y'all, and hope to be able to see you in our Lunch and Learns maybe in 2025, or International Grant Professionals Day is just more than 3 months away. If you don't already have it on your calendar, second Friday in March. But the Learn Grants Online Summit, which is going to be an early celebration this year, is totally free. And I hope to see each and every one of you there. 10-minute clips. Allison's been there before. Perhaps we'll see Amaya show up one year on it as well. But it's really a fun celebration of all the awesome things that this community does of grant writers. And so here's the save the date for it. You can bookmark it. It's where the registration page will go out. It's March 7th, and it is totally free. So we hope to see you there. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Diane. There's the link in the chat for anybody who's curious. Make sure you click that. And Allison, let's go to you.
Yeah, well, my year-end gift to everyone is the Go No Go guide. It's an assessment tool to look at a grant opportunity and determine if your organization is ready to go for it. And if not, then develop a plan to get ready for it in the future. So I'll drop that in. And then the other link I'm sharing is just a link to my certificate in grant writing course, which is credited for 24 points towards your GPC or your CFRE. And yeah, so thanks for being here. Please stay connected. I'd love to get to know everyone more.
Thank you, Allison, Diana, Maya, once more. There's a bunch of links in the chat box, and folks, you will get all of these resources in the toolkit that's coming to your inbox tomorrow as well. So no worries, you will not lose anything. And with that, I want to say a huge thank you and a farewell to our panelists. It's been such a pleasure to have you here at the last event of the year, and I'm looking forward to more opportunities to bring you to our community in 2025. So hopefully we'll get some more events with you all, but thank you so much. This has been truly fantastic, and the chat is on the same page with me about that. So thank you all. And folks,
Thank you, Mia.
yeah, of course. It's our pleasure, really. It is such an honor to have experts like you that are willing to come onto our programs and share your knowledge and your wisdom. So thank you. And folks, with that, I'm going to go back to our presentation. All right. It's time to dive into our workshop. It's all about grants. And to get us started, I want to know, how are you feeling about your grant strategy in 2025? So we got a lot of good tips from Allison, from Amaya, from Diane about, grants, proposals, capacity building, all those things. But just right now, let's say scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about your 2025 grant strategy? 1 being, not ready, haven't really thought about it, and 10 being, we are locked and ready to roll. 5s, 4s, 2s, 7s, 9, 8. All right, there's a range. There's a range. Regardless of where you're at, I'm sure there's always a couple new strategies you could use in your toolkit, right? So if you said 0, if you said 1, 2, 3, you are 100% not alone. In a survey we put out to grant writers, 80% said they want to improve their grant strategy. And that is a huge amount, right? So I want to make sure if you're feeling iffy, if you're feeling a little bit demotivated about your strategy, you are not the odd one out. It is a totally normal place to be because grants are hard. And there's a lot of ways we can tackle our grant strategies. So organized tracking, better collaboration, getting more buy-in from your team, better time management, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, our goal is the same, right? And it's that we want to win more grants. And winning more grants, we need to be identifying and staying on top of best fit opportunities. And so, of course, this is easier said than done, but lucky you, you are at an Instrumentl workshop, and Instrumentl just so happens to be a tool that can do a lot of this heavy lifting for you. So with the time we have left, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get into the workshop. I want to note that this is for US-based 501c3 nonprofits. Unfortunately, Instrumentl can only serve US-based 501c3 nonprofits for now. So if you're not based in the US or you're not a 501c3 nonprofit or a consultant serving 501c3 nonprofits, you won't be able to dive into the platform for the duration of this workshop, but you can still follow along and see some of the tools that we're using. And when you dive into the platform, you'll be able to get your list on your hands on a list of good fit funders to take back to your team. This is sourced from over 21,000 active grants in our database. If there's anyone who's currently an Instrumentl customer, sit tight for a few minutes. We're going to help new folks get set up, but there's actually a bunch of brand new features that I'm going to show you on the platform today. So there might be something interesting for you in here as well. And if there's anybody who used to have an Instrumentl trial, you can take this opportunity to request an extension. Somebody from our team will get in touch with you. I won't be able to do it for the duration of this event, so you can just follow along on my screen. But there's that option. And if you are new to Instrumentl and you're a US-based 501c3 nonprofit, you are going to get totally free, no credit card required, no strings attached, 2-week access to Instrumentl Pro using this link that I just put in the chat. Please make sure you use this link. If you just go to instrumentl.com, you will not be able to get into the workshop. So go ahead and click that link and I will walk you through our 10-minute workshop now. We have 10 minutes left and we can do it all in 10 minutes because that's how quick Instrumentl is. So go ahead and open up that link. You're going to get to a page that says try 14 days free. You'll click that button and then you're going to fill out some very basic information to get started. If you've ever filled out an online form, if you've ever signed up for anything, this is that same old flow, your name, your email address, your organization, all that good stuff. So go ahead and fill that out. And I'm going to explain the next step and then pause for a minute so everyone can catch up. If you have an Instrumentl account, feel free to pull it up so you can follow along. Like I said, I'm going to be showing more than just the prospecting today. So there's going to be something exciting for you. So once you get to this page, you'll be able to book a call with one of our grant advisors. These people are super knowledgeable, but because we want you to get into the workshop right now, you can just hit skip at the bottom of the page. You can always come back and book a call with these folks. They can walk you through Instrumentl, and they can also advise on your overall grant strategy. So I definitely recommend circling back, but for now, just hit skip. And once you've done that, let me know in the chat, give me a thumbs up or tell me a yes if you're following along, it's all working out. I'm going to show you how to actually curate a list of dozens and probably even hundreds of good fit grant opportunities specific to your organization in the next 2.5 minutes. All right, let's get to it. And you can always catch up on the recording if you missed something here. But you're essentially going to fill out a quick form about your organization. So you're going to select where you're located. So for me, I'm doing LA County. And then you're going to select your fiscal year, just some baseline information for Instrumentl to get to know you. And then once we've done that, we're going to give it information about a specific project we want funded. So this isn't your organization as a whole, but it's a specific project of yours. So for the purpose of this workshop, I'll do a history education program. And now I'm going to give it information about this program. So I'm a nonprofit, but say I'm partnering with a museum and a school. I'll indicate that as well so I can see grants eligible for those folks. And then I am not a faith-based organization, but this is where you could indicate if you are. And once you've done that, you're going to select your locations again. And what this does is it makes sure it's giving you national funders, so folks that would fund everywhere. And it's also giving you funders that are really only interested in funding super local projects. So there might be a funder who only wants to fund in LA County, and Instrumentl would show me that. Fields of work, this is the backbone of our algorithm. You're going to type in keywords about your project, and this is how you're going to get matched. So you can scroll through all the keywords and see what makes sense, or you can just type in some common ones that you know relate to your work. So for me, I'm doing history, museums, arts, youth education. We recommend starting with about 2 to 5, and you can always come back and refine this criteria. So based on the fields of work you select, along with all the other things that you input, you'll get matched with good fit grants. You'll indicate the size of the grant you're interested in. So maybe you don't want anything under 10K right now, what you're going to use the funding for, and then you'll say what types of funders you want to see grants from. So if you don't want federal right now, we can actually exclude them for you. And the last step is you can actually invite your colleagues to come play on Instrumentl with you for these 2 weeks so you can, get that early buy-in from your team, right? And then once you've done that, you are good to go and you are going to get matched. Okay, there we go, 316 grants, just like that for my history education program. So hopefully, I know I rolled through that really quick. Like I said, you can always come back and make changes. I'm going to pause right there and give everybody just a minute to catch up. But you can really think of Instrumentl in terms of prospecting as a grant matchmaker. So we gave it this information about a specific project, and it gave us a list of grants that are curated to our needs. Now I'm going to go a step further, and let me show you what I mean. So I got all of these matches, right? I got over 100. Now I can actually go through them and evaluate them in more detail. So not all 316 are going to actually be a good fit for me. What I do is I can look at grant information, so you know what the actual award is for, but I can go a step further and actually evaluate the funder as a whole to see if they're actually aligned with me. So I'll look at the 990 report, and this is pulled from IRS data. It's totally accurate and it's beautifully laid out for you. We have this for every private foundation. So you can see key people, you can see how much money they give. So, if in 2022 they gave $0, maybe it's not worth my time to apply. I can see the medians and the averages of the grants they give. So if I'm interested in $100,000, this might not be the funder for me, right? On the other hand, if I'm interested in 5K, this is great. We can see where they're funding. So if I'm in California, this works. I see that they fund there all the time. And I can actually see the exact organizations they gave to in the past, how much they gave to them and what they gave for, which is a gold mine. And then we can see openness to new grantees. This is also a really important factor. We can see how much of their funding goes to organizations they've never given to before. So if I'm asking for a first-time grant, I'm going to know if I'm fighting an uphill battle if they only give, 2% of funding to new organizations, right? So every 990 report is really a gold mine. And what we can do here is we can actually save it to our tracker. So I've evaluated it and I think, you know what, this is a great fit for me. I need to do a bit more research, but I'm going to go ahead and save it to my tracker. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second, but this is where you can build a little short list of opportunities that you're exploring. And on that note, I want to shout out Instrumentl's newest release. It takes an entirely different load off your shoulders. So if you've been to our webinars before, you know all about how Instrumentl can match you with good fit opportunities. But we have something new. If you've ever been asked by leadership what the status is on our grants program, or you've had to scramble to pull together metrics and data, or if you're constantly forgetting to update spreadsheets and documents to reflect where you're at with grants, we have a solution for you. And it's called our performance dashboard. So it'll break down your grants data into easy to read charts and graphs to illustrate your progress, your history, and you can actually export this data into an Excel spreadsheet. So reporting is going to be a breeze. This is a quick glance at what it looks like, but what I'm going to do actually is I want to share with you, and let me find it. All right, can y'all see that? I don't think I'm sharing the right thing. One moment. One moment. Having a technical difficulty here. Let me switch that up. I want to show you the performance dashboard in action because it's such a useful feature. So now you see that, right? Yeah, you see my tracker. So this is what your tracker looks like when you've saved a bunch of grants to it. So what's really beautiful here is the deadlines. First of all, they come in on their own. So you're not putting the deadlines here. Instrumentl pulls that for you based on the grant maker's information. You'll get automatic email updates when a deadline changes or when it's approaching, and you can change the status. So this grant I'm saying has been awarded to me. I can make a note. I said I received 40K even though I requested 50K. I can always change this. If I get rejected, I can change it to declined. If I decide to not pursue it, I can change it to abandoned. And you can actually see my status up here is updating automatically. So it's tracking these changes. You can add notes and to-do lists for specific opportunities. So for this one, for example, I've submitted an application and now I want to send a holiday card to the grant maker to just remind them, I've submitted an application. When it's done, I can mark it as done. It goes away. And here's the beauty of reporting. So I'll go into reports. This is that button right here. And this is a sandbox account, right? So this is just for me to show. It would look much better when it's all of your grants data in here, but it'll actually put into charts all of your grant history. So my grant win rate, it's showing me what's been declined and what I've won. It's showing me my status. So if leadership asks, what's the status of our grants right now? You can say, well, in 2024, we've been awarded 23, we've been declined 5, and we've submitted 17 applications. We can also see if we're applying to new funders or repeat funders. We can say how many grants we're researching. We can show how much we've requested. So it's just all of these beautiful dashboards that are just going to illustrate your entire grants process for you. And the really important thing that I mentioned earlier is you can actually export those as spreadsheets. So you have it in Instrumentl, you can see it, all of your insights. When leadership wants to see it, they can go right into the spreadsheet that you send them and have it all there. So it really takes that off your shoulders. And with that, oh, I do also want to shout out, if you're already using Instrumentl, this is one of our new pro features. So if you're not on Pro, I encourage you to click that link, and we have members of our team who would be happy to walk through our new Pro features with you, just to explore if there's maybe a new solution that we've rolled out that works for you. And on that note, I want to shout out a mission that's in your worksheet. If you do these 4 things, I think you're going to be set up really well for your grants program in 2025. Even if you decide that Instrumentl isn't the tool for you at all, you have it for 2 weeks free right now. So you can go in, curate a whole bunch of grants, and just roll through the beginning of 2025 using grants that you found on a free version of Instrumentl. Totally not saying you need to subscribe, but you do have access to it for 2 weeks. So complete this mission, you'll be in really good shape. And what else? We covered a lot today. So here are next steps that I would love for you to do. The first is to get organized with your grant strategy by completing that mission, like I just said. The second is to explore more resources. So I will send out a resource pack in the email tomorrow. It's going to have a bunch more freebies. It's yours to keep, and you'll get the event recording as well. So continue to explore those resources. And finally, the last step is I want you all to have an amazing 2025 and take your organization to new heights. We are incredibly honored to play a very small role in each of your nonprofit journeys and the very important causes you serve. So I want to thank you for being here today and letting Instrumentl be part of your story. And I hope you're walking away with a lot of new insights and tools. And I want to make sure you can get a little treat. So before you drop off, we would love to hear your feedback on this program. In 2025, we are continuing to bring you workshops every single week. Catherine, there will be a recording. You'll get it in your inbox tomorrow. As a thank you, here's the feedback form. As a thank you, 5 folks who fill this out will win coffee on us. So if you want your Friday morning coffee on Instrumentl, please go ahead and fill out our feedback form. I read every single submission that comes in, especially right now as we are building out our 2025 calendar. And bear with me, it's the end of year, so we're in gift giving mode. You also have a chance to win $100 to Amazon. We're giving away 3 gift cards tomorrow. And to enter this raffle, it's super simple. All you have to do is go to LinkedIn and share how Instrumentl is helping your grant seeking. So it can be as simple as just shouting out that you attended this webinar and here's a key takeaway. Or if you're an Instrumentl user, you can shout out a feature you love or how Instrumentl is saving you time. Make sure you use the hashtag. I'm going to put it right in the chat here. And anybody who posts something with this hashtag is automatically entered into this raffle. We're drawing winners tomorrow, so you still have plenty of time to make a post. And on that note, I want to thank you all for spending your morning with me and Diane and Allison and Amaya. I also want to extend a huge thank you to all of you for welcoming me so warmly into this Instrumentl community. Many of you events regulars have been with Instrumentl a lot longer than I have. It's been such a joy getting to know all of you, spending a couple hours every week with all of you, seeing so many new faces every week, but also so many familiar faces. I remember back in August at my first event, there were so many names, and I'm still seeing a lot of those names in the chat today. So it really means a lot that you all have been with me at all of these events this quarter. Thank you so much for welcoming me. And I am not saying goodbye because we will be back here in January and I want to see each of you there, right? If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email address is right there. As a reminder, this full participation in this event is applicable for 1.5 CFRE points. So you can go onto your portal and submit for those points. You can use your worksheet as proof of attendance if that is asked of you. And what else? Don't forget to enter our LinkedIn raffle, fill out our feedback form for that coffee raffle. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy holidays if you're celebrating. Happy winter, happy end of year. I know we're all celebrating that. And I know we still have a couple weeks left. So good luck on all of those deadlines and everything that's coming up in this crazy world of grants. Thank you all so much. And I will see you in January. Bye.